What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast. I am Rob Stats Guerrera here with you. Going to be joined shortly by Vish Kumaran, who's just finishing up a work thing, and then he's going to pop on. If you are new to the show, this is Under Review, where we take a second look at the 49ers' most recent game, as painful as it may be. And God knows it's painful. We are going to dive into everything that happened in the NFC Championship game. We'll also get into some of what we can expect to see this offseason for the 49ers. I think it's going to be a very eventful offseason. There's a lot of free agents. I think this team's going to look a hell of a lot different than it looked this year. And we are going to get into all of it. Before we totally dive in, I just want to remind everybody, please stay subscribed to the Niners Nation Podcast Network if you're already subscribed there. And please, if you're not subscribed to the Gold Standard Podcast, please subscribe there as well. Subscribe to both is what I'm telling you. I'm still working out some things with SB Nation. For anyone that doesn't know, I was recently laid off. So we're working some things out as opposed in terms of who gets control of the feed. And it looks like that they are going to be very gracious and let me have control of it. But we're still working it out. So just stay subscribed to both places for now. And thank you to everybody that has supported me throughout this time. It's been a little rough, not going to lie. I needed a win there for the 49ers for many, many reasons, but nonetheless, I digress. Thank you for all your reviews. I always say if you take the time to leave a review, we'll read it on the show. This one comes from LMFG9, Stats for Comeback Player of the Year. Over the last 2 years, Rob, Michelle, Levin, and the gang have been a daily listen on SB Nation. When they vanished for a week, I panicked until I found the Gold Standard. Glad to have my daily Niners fix back. Rob gets a lot of heat for being a downer. But how can you pick the Eagles, man? Ha, ha, ha. Yes, I know. Preseason predictions be damned. Niners 27-21. Yeah, I wish that was the case. Anyway, thank you for all of the reviews. We do appreciate it. Okay, now let's dive into this game because something that I've taken a lot of criticism for on Twitter, and I wanted to get Vish's take on it, is the fourth down play that Kyle Shanahan did not challenge. I personally think it wasn't a huge deal. Other people think it was a massive deal. And usually when I'm out on that limb, I'm fine with it. But when you are out on a limb, I think it's appropriate to stop, take a look around, and maybe re-examine your own position and say, is everybody else right? And so that's what I wanted to do today. I stopped, I looked around, I rewatched the game. I don't think it's as important as everybody's making it out to be. Was it important? Sure. Was it as important? No, I don't think it is. And everybody's chiming in. Trey Wingo's chiming in, coming at me on Twitter. It was important, obviously, because the Eagles don't score if Kyle Shanahan challenges that. Or, I want to point out, if the NFL actually did what they were supposed to do and review it themselves in the expedited review process, which I don't know why they didn't do, nonetheless, Kyle could have challenged it. Sorry, I'm just seeing this comment from Mr. J. Nobody's arguing your Niner loyalty. We just questioned why as a Niner fan, you would pick the Eagles over your team in a championship game. Because I thought the Eagles would win. You are questioning my loyalty when you say, why as a Niner fan would you pick the Eagles over your team in a championship game? You're saying that as a Niner fan, I should just pick the Niners for every game, no matter what. That is not, I thought the Eagles were going to win. I thought it was going to be close. I thought Sirianni's aggressiveness was going to be the reason the Niners won. So, yeah, sorry to sort of derail my thought there. But going back to the Devontae Smith play, the fourth down play. Yes, obviously, points would have come off the board, but we don't know what would have happened after that. Would it have been different? Maybe. Would it have been the same? Maybe. We don't know, right? Kyle was still in the scripted portion of the playbook. So maybe he would have called exactly the same plays and maybe the exact same thing would have happened. Maybe it would have been different. It would have been different if any of the 5 plays before Brock got hurt went differently, right? If one of those runs goes for a touchdown, then maybe Brock doesn't get hurt then. But we don't focus on that. We only focus on that fourth down play, and I don't think that's right. That was my position on it. Let's see. Lauren watching on YouTube, thank you, says it's the butterfly effect. It happened before the Purdy injury. Not unreasonable to think there is no injury, less to do with the scoreboard. Maybe. But again, we don't know. And there were other plays before the Purdy injury that could have gone differently also. But we don't focus on those. And that's my thing, is that those plays, if you want to say if things went differently, Purdy doesn't get hurt, those plays count too. That's all I'm saying. I think that we look for something to blame for injuries, right? We want to blame something or someone, or say, if we just did this differently, they wouldn't have happened. And I get that urge, because it sucks what happened yesterday. As Eddie on YouTube says, I'm still feeling absolutely gut punch from last night's game. I appreciate you now more than ever. Thank you, Eddie. But it hurts, right? I'm hurting today. I still got my Niners sweatshirt on from Homage. By the way, shout out Homage. They have great 49ers stuff. If you click on the link in the podcast description, you can get all their 49ers stuff. Please, please do, by the way, because if you want to support us and the show and me, support our sponsors. That's the best thing you can do. But yeah, man, this is a gut punch. It hurts. It's always going to hurt, right? We know we lost the NFC Championship game in 2021. We know what that's like. It's always going to hurt. So I get the urge to point to one thing. If this was just different, if Kyle just challenged here, but I don't think it fits in this case. That was my point. Thomas said, Kyle Shanahan said he wanted a challenge, but didn't. That's true. They didn't have good views of the replay. And it looks like Vish is here, so let's pop him in. What's up, Vish? How you doing?
What's up, Rob? Sorry about that. It's great to be here back with you. We missed a Monday, unfortunately. We didn't get to see the last iteration of your Victory Monday shirt, but at least that thing is getting washed now, so the rest of your family is rejoicing probably.
I guess I have to buckle down now and finally wash the Victory Monday shirt now that streak is over.
Oh, you still haven't done it yet?
No, I haven't done laundry.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah, the thing I'm talking about, I wanted to start with today as we sort of review what happened, painful as it may be. Right. I don't think the non-challenge on the 4th down catch in the first quarter on the first drive of the game was nearly as important as people have made it out to be. Am I alone on that branch, or are you coming out with me?
I'm on that branch with you, but I don't necessarily agree. It all depends on the timing, right? At the time it happened, I do think it was really important. But the moment Brock Purdy got hurt, it became kind of a moot point in what was pretty much the story of the game, right? The night this game was a little bit out of Josh Johnson's league.
Oh yeah.
He's a nice guy, clearly. He's been around. He's had a successful NFL career, but he's not made to come in and mop up duty in the NFC Championship game against that Philadelphia team at Philadelphia. You have no chance. You really have no chance. And so, look, at the time, like when it happened, yeah, it was a big turning point because that was 7 points on a drive. The Niners, like their initial plan against Philadelphia, it worked. They stifled them that drive. They kept Hurts in the pocket. Yep. They kept their rush lanes tight and didn't let him escape through the pocket. When he got outside of the pocket, they forced him to pass instead of allowing him to run. They had a nice plan against the run game. We hadn't seen a Hurts design run, and he kind of threw one up, and Smith made a great play. Jimmy Ward did a really good job getting his hand in there. But at that time, it was a big deal, right? Because the Niners shut down Philadelphia, but they still ended up with the opening drive touchdown. But now that we have the 2020 hindsight to sit back here and actually look at the game, I'm 100% with you, Rob. It doesn't make a difference. Nothing was making a difference. And we can agree and argue about all these different points, and we will today, and a lot of Niners fans will for a lot longer than today. But you were not winning that game in Philadelphia with Josh Johnson. It's just not happening.
Yeah, oh God, no. It was too big for him. And we gave Brock a lot of credit for not being flustered by the moment. Like, we saw what it looks like when the moment's too big for you. And this is not bang on Josh Johnson time. It's the NFC Championship game. It's the 6th play of the game. It would have been too big for most people in that spot.
Right. Absolutely. And it isn't bang on Josh Johnson. You're absolutely right. He did the best of what he's capable of doing. It's just understanding who Josh Johnson is, right, understanding how good Philadelphia is, and understanding the magnitude of playing that game on the road. I mean, Josh Johnson, he was pressured a lot, but he was also feeling phantom pressure a lot. He looked out of his element. He didn't have the urgency or the talent or the awareness really to be in that moment playing in that game. And not a lot of people do. So it's not offense to him. He has enough talent to have a 15-year NFL career. So good for him.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Thomas James, smash the like button on the YouTube page. Yes, please. And thank you. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. Again, all the support you can provide would be fantastic. Ben Richards watching on Twitch. Josh Johnson had no business being out there. Why was he suited up? Even if you go through multiple quarterbacks in the season, you need to have an adequate backup. Well, again, we're not talking about the starter. We're not talking about the backup. We're not
We're not
talking
even
about
talking
the
about the third
backups, backup.
string.
We're talking about the backup here. I mean, come on. Who
Right. It was Josh Johnson, or it was Cam Newton, or it was Mike Glennon, or it was something like that. Now, do you want to blame the 49ers for not forcing the Colts to somehow cut Matt Ryan and then signing Matt Ryan for dirt cheap and keeping him on the roster just in case of this situation? Maybe. But they did do something a lot of people didn't like this offseason for this exact thing. They brought Jimmy Garoppolo back and they kept Brock Purdy. A lot of people at the time that they kept three quarterbacks were blown away that they kept three quarterbacks. They were like, why do you need three quarterbacks? They did have the foresight and they handled this situation. It's just you can't get this unlucky. And then the only other option I would suggest is Baker Mayfield. Right? Maybe they could have put in a waiver claim and all of that, but would we really have been putting up would we have, let's say they did get him, would we have been putting up with the Baker Mayfield circus behind Brock Purdy and all of that? I don't think so. It would have been a kind of toxic, gross situation because Brock Purdy would be playing well, and for whatever reason, you would have Baker Mayfield, who's done next to nothing the last 2 years, just hanging over his shoulder because he's a big name with a big personality. It would be an awkward situation. I can't really blame them for Josh Johnson playing. I know everybody wants to assign blame onto something, Rob. Like, we need something to blame. The 49ers lost. This is a really just an unfortunate situation.
Bay Marin watching on YouTube. Josh Johnson was what everybody expected Brock Purdy to be. That's a great point. Absolutely was the case. And I said that exact thing before you hopped in, Vish. We look for something and someone to blame, some decision that we could have made differently, somebody to blame for a play on the field, whatever it was. We do look for someone to blame. And so that's why I don't put as much importance on it, even though I recognize that, yes, things may have worked out differently. Of course, that's always a possibility. But it was 7 points. It was the first drive of the game. Kyle Shanahan had looked at it. The people in the booth had looked at it. Nobody was sure. And Kyle didn't want to risk a timeout, and he didn't want to risk calling a timeout and then potentially having to risk another timeout to review it. So it was a confluence of things that conspired to hurt the 49ers in that case.
So my real argument at that point is, right, the NFL has the sky judge who's supposed to get all the views right away. That should have been overturned on the field. It was an important enough down where they should have taken a look at it and overturned it on the field. I mean, the officiating wasn't, I don't know if the officiating dictated the results in either game yesterday, but it was horrible.
It didn't help.
It didn't help, right? It didn't help. And it was extremely frustrating to watch what could have been an epic Sunday of football turn out with the Niners injury, the bad officiating, all of that. It was a frustrating day. But the one thing I do want to add, Rob, to that original conversation that we came in and we were having about that fourth down play and Josh Johnson and his kind of thing. The one thing I was disappointed with in terms of Josh Johnson, I know we can't criticize him really. It's an unfair situation. But the one thing I really was disappointed by was the fact that I thought the basics for a veteran quarterback were not even there. He couldn't even get them in and out of the huddle on time, right? He couldn't even get the ball snapped on time. They had 3 delay of game penalties.
Yes.
He had obviously the fumble, which was see you later to the game after Christian McCaffrey had a legendary playoff drive with, backpacking the offense up the field with catch after catch. And then one of the great touchdown runs, I would say, in 49ers history in the playoffs. That was a special, special run, especially given who he made miss those tackles. So that was great, but he took him out of the game and all he had to do was catch the snap. The most rudimentary thing a quarterback has to do, catch the snap. He couldn't do it. And that's where I thought it was extra frustrating because I had such little expectations for Josh Johnson. And even the little basic things that I thought he would be able to do weren't even there, which gave them zero chance.
Yeah, B Peak says 3 delay of games plus a fumble. Game was over as soon as Brock was out. And I want to say this. I give credit to Kyle Shanahan for going for it at the end of the first half. I thought that was 100% the right decision, right? The Niners are sitting there. They get the ball back with 1:36 left. I believe they had all 3 timeouts.
Right.
They were down 7 points in the game. A touchdown there ties it up, or a field goal puts you in position to potentially take the lead coming out of the third quarter. I know it's Josh Johnson. I know it's your backup quarterback. I know the Eagles defense is really good. I thought Kyle did the exact right thing in that situation. And it's not like Josh Johnson threw a dumb pick, right? Or didn't see a check at the line of scrimmage. The mistake he made is like you said, the bare minimum. You should expect your quarterback to be able to catch a shotgun snap. So I don't criticize Kyle Shanahan there at all, even though I know David Lombardi and other people were. I don't get that.
Here's the other thing I'll add to why I don't criticize Shanahan for that. And I know I do a lot of non-criticizing of Shanahan, but if I was Shanahan in that situation and I had Josh Johnson who was looking totally flustered, even the drive he took me down the field, he was struggling to even get the ball off to Christian McCaffrey. And we're talking about 1 to 2 yard passes. He was feeling phantom pressure. He was getting totally flustered by the pressure. I would have looked at that 2-minute offense is an opportunity where if I can get him a couple of quick rhythm throws, because they're going to be playing a little bit off, because they're going to have a little bit of space and not concede the big play, I can maybe build some confidence for Josh Johnson to move something forward in the second half where Johnson at least feels like I'm in a rhythm and I can make a couple of throws. I mean, he made one NFL throw, Rob. He made one NFL throw, and that was the one to Kittle. He couldn't get the ball past the line of scrimmage, and that's where I can't even blame Shanahan, because you're looking at that situation and you're saying, if I can get the right personnel on the field, I can get them in tempo. I can give this guy a little bit of a rhythm, and maybe if this is 14-10, I can give my defense some confidence where, hey, all they got to do is play discipline because we're just one play away. We're just one play away. And then it turns into the Green Bay game from last year where it could be one special teams play, could be something. But he took that game away from them by fumbling the snap and dropping the snap. And you want to blame Shanahan? How can a coach predict that their quarterback is not going to be able to catch the snap? That's not involved in the calculation of how aggressive should I be, how much time is left, and all of that. You would think that Josh Johnson, who's played in the NFL for 15 years, when the snap hits him between the 1-7, it's secured.
If your quarterback can't catch a snap, you can't run the clock out either. Just pointing that out, right? You still have to be able to catch the snap to hand the ball off. Mr. J says, then who's responsible for the loss? Shanahan, Lynch, York? That's the point, Mr. J. Nobody. Fate. The football gods are responsible for this loss. And that's why it's so hard to take. That's where the pain comes from, because our chance to go to the Super Bowl was stolen from us, not by the Eagles, but by an act of God, for lack of a better term. It would be so much easier to be on here today saying, you know what? The Eagles were just better. They beat us. That's fine. There's no shame in losing to the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's not what happened, Vish. We never got to play the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. And that was the frustrating thing for me yesterday and today. I used to get more emotional when I was a kid, but now I really can stomach the winning and the losing more or less.
That's cute.
Hey, Rob, I've been in adulthood for 5 years now. Come on.
Oh, 5 years, huh?
5 years. Back in my day. I was born in the 90s, by the way, Rob. So just put some respect on my age here. I'm from a different era here.
Okay. My bad.
Best 18 days of my life. I'll tell you that. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I don't get that emotional. I felt like the story for this team wasn't written. It wasn't finished. We never got to find the ending to this team. Yep. And that, in conclusion, look, I would have been okay if they went into Philadelphia yesterday and they just lost. Philadelphia's a really good team. Okay, they lost. I would have been able to come here and say, these are the football reasons why they lost. I would have enjoyed the game. It would have been a great matchup. I would have obviously been disappointed that the Niners lost, but we could talk about football here today. Instead, we're here talking about this and that. That doesn't really make a difference because they weren't going to win that game with Josh Johnson no matter what. And I don't know if this 49ers team was actually the best team in the NFL this year. I don't know if they were actually better than Philadelphia. I don't know if they would have won the Super Bowl this year. And I think they could have all those things. Or maybe their season would have finished the exact same way it finished yesterday. But we never got to find out because the game never was played.
Yep.
Once Brock Purdy got hurt, that was all she wrote. That was see you later. It was done. Nothing else was there.
I totally agree with you. And it was so weird watching an NFC Championship game after halftime and you're like, we don't have a shot, especially after Josh Johnson was concussed, of course. Then you're like literally at one point in the game, Kyle Juszczyk and Christian McCaffrey are huddling up with Brian Griese on the sideline, like potentially going to have to be quarterback. This was an NFC Championship game. I tweeted out, if this was happening to me in Madden, I would have rage quit 2 quarters ago because you just would never have believed that it could occur.
Oh, if this was happening in Madden, you would be cursing out the game like this. You would be telling your opponent how lucky they are, whatever.
Yep.
And instead, in real life, you just have to sit there and take it. And there were some people who told me in the post game, like, why didn't they try a wildcat? Why didn't they try something with Christian McCaffrey? Shanahan said they were planning to do that. They just couldn't even pick up 1 first down. And we did see Christian McCaffrey make that one throw. And I think there's a good reason why he was not throwing at all.
That shot was so telling afterwards because McCaffrey's throw lands near nobody except John Lynch, who's on the sideline, and it's just Lynch there with the ball, no players. And I just that was like a moment that crystallized the whole game for me. Lauren Klein on YouTube. I hate the people who thought the Niners had no shot prior to the game somehow feel they were justified by this game and continue to run their mouth. Fans of the opposing team are always going to run their mouth because they don't want to feel like they have to apologize for the win. And by the way, Eagles fans don't have to apologize for the win. They should be happy. They're going to the Super Bowl. Who cares what their road to the Super Bowl was? If you said to me the Niners could be in the Super Bowl with the exact same thing happening, I would take it, and I would not apologize for it. So don't worry about Eagles fans running their mouth. But the reality,
and I would also pretend that the Niners would have won the game the same exact way if the circumstance had been the same, just as Eagles fans are doing now. And the reality of it is that there's also a bunch of Niners fans pretending that the Niners would have definitely won that game if Brock Purdy stayed healthy. And that's not the case either. These were 2 really, really great teams. And where we got robbed was as fans of football. That should have been a legendary game. I said it before the game, and I still believe it. If you look at the NFC in the last 10 years, these 2 teams, both of them are capable of beating any of the teams that represented the NFC in the Super Bowl in the last 10 years, sans maybe the Legion of Boom Seahawks. That's how good I think both these teams are. And they had been stomping on a horrible NFC all year. They had been just obliterating teams. And they're both so stacked on both lines of scrimmage. The skill weapons are so good. The secondaries, the linebackers, everything is just good, above average across the board. Like, we missed out on literally, this is, Ali versus Joe Frazier, but if one of them came into the fight without being able to throw a right hand because it's broken.
Yep. That's the issue. And we never got to see it, and we'll never get to see it because this team's going to look different next year, Vish. And I was saying that before you popped on, too. There's a lot of free agent talk. A lot of quarterback talk. By the way, I just had to throw this in here from Alfonso. Vish got that Greek god jawline. There you go. Alfonso's very into commenting on the physical appearance of the Gold Standard Podcast hosts, but they're usually funny, so I throw them in there.
Who is he more complimentary to, you or Levin?
Well, he did say Levin had a fantastic forehead yesterday, so
I did see Levin after the Dallas game. He posted a picture of him going for a walk, and he was dressed up full Niners gear, and he had the gloves too. That was swag to the max. I would love to hear Alfonso's review of that one.
There you go. Well, there you go, Alfonso. The gauntlet has been laid down. The big news coming out of this game, and I texted you immediately, is obviously Brock Purdy. We don't know what's up with Brock Purdy. Kyle Shanahan's going to speak at some point today, I would imagine. Brock was scheduled to have an MRI. Tom Legendary on Twitch, if Purdy needs Tommy John and has to miss all of next year, bring in Matt Ryan to back up Lance. If Lance can't go, just go get Brady. Personally, what I think is going to happen is that I think the Brady thing is real. I think losses like this can cause you to change your long-term plans. Events sometimes, what do they say? Circumstances dictate action, right? When the Rams got Matt Stafford 2 years ago, I think that Kyle Shanahan was like, we got to do something. We can't just stay status quo. And what happened after that? Boom. They trade up to number 3 and eventually end up taking Trey Lance.
Because they had the same exact plan, right? They wanted Matthew Stafford. Exactly. They had the same plan as the Rams. Get Stafford, win the Super Bowl.
When I was a kid, and the Niners lost to the Cowboys in 1993, the word from the Niners front office was, this can never happen to us again. And you know what happened in that offseason, Vish? The
Deion
Niners signed
Sanders.
the Niners signed 27 free agents that offseason. And they rebuilt the team and they went after the Cowboys. And of course, they eventually won. Sometimes stuff happens that forces you to change your plan. I think Kyle's going to huddle up with York and huddle up with Lynch and say, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of coming up short in the NFC Championship game. I'm tired of quarterback injuries. I'm done. I want Tom Brady. The guy's never hurt. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. We don't have to give up a single draft pick to acquire him. I don't give a crap about the salary cap situation. Get it done. And I think that is what is going to happen this offseason.
And the new number for the league year came out, right? It's 224.8 million has been allocated for the cap this year. And I think the Niners are at like 212 or 213 or something like that. So it's going to be pretty tight in terms of fitting Brady in. But I do think they could make that work. And I don't know if Brady is really that expensive anymore, because Brady still has his strengths. But I also think Brady probably, without the Niners roster, if you're just picking blank roster, blank quarterback, Brady probably fits closer to 15 than he does to 5. But then if you put them on the Niners roster, Brady probably fits closer to 5 than to 15, just because he can do the most with most still. He just needs more today than he would have needed because he's, older than Rob by 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically closer to 50 than 40 at this point, which is crazy.
Exactly. Exactly. But I agree with you. I do think they're going to go that route. And I do think this is kind of that moment, because I think the ideal situation is Purdy has that 6-week UCL sprain. He's able to fully recover it. Lance is able to spend his time rehabbing and get better. And you go in with those two guys into this year, and you have Purdy as the starter. You have Lance as the backup. But basically your situation is open because you have two young guys who are cheap, and you feel like one of them is going to end up being your starter by the end of the year. Purdy could retain the job and play the exact way he's played so far this year and continue that. Purdy could play poorly and Lance could become that guy. Purdy could get injured and Lance could become that guy. Purdy could play poorly. Lance could play great, get injured. Purdy then could become the guy. It could be a bunch of different scenarios, but your idea is that we have two guys we think have the potential to become our guy. Let's not pick one now. Let's have both of them go through it and let them figure out who that guy is going to be. And so that would be ideal. But if Purdy is out with what was described to get the Tommy John and out, I don't think you can obviously just come into the season with Lance coming off of injury, penciled in as the starter. And I just look at the way they called plays for Lance early in the season and the little we got to see, and the way Shanahan had structured the offense and all the reporting we got about all the running they were going to do and all of that. I feel like we're kind of stuck in limbo with Lance, where if Shanahan was freaked enough to make him so run-centric to feel like that's the best chance I have to win as I develop him right now, I don't think that changes even with him coming a year removed off the injury. And we have to also take into account, is he going to be the same runner coming off of the injury and all like that? I don't know if they'll play the game with him just coming in as the starter. They clearly believe in him, so there's no way I don't think he's going to go anywhere. But that's where you might look at it and say, if we get Brady for a year and we win a Super Bowl, then we can run it back in Lance's year 4 and Purdy's year 3 and figure out between those two guys who ends up being the starter and do it like that. We'll just have the Super Bowl in our back pocket. But I do think they're going to be desperate to go do it now, because they're going to feel like next year is going to be their last real shot, because Bosa and Trent and all these people they go from expensive to, oh my God, they're consuming all your cap in a couple years. Yeah.
Otherworldly. And that's an easy sell, right? Kyle can say, even to the locker room, sure, Brock did great, but you know what? He's not going to be healthy. He got hurt. Trey's coming back from injury. We're going to bring in, we're not bringing in Tim Tebow here. We're bringing in the greatest quarterback of all time, because we owe you a Super Bowl. We have unfinished business. And then Brady can go off into the sunset. And then you don't have to say like, oh, you dumped Tom Brady for Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. No, it all kind of works itself out.
And it's a sell to Lance too, right? It's like, hey, we've been developing you for 2 years. instead of, putting you out there, whatever, you just continue to develop. You're going to stay cost control for us. We still believe in you. That's why we traded so much for you. But this is the greatest quarterback of all time. We've already said no once. It burned us. We got to do this. You just stay behind him. You learn as much as you can, and he'll be gone in a year. And you're right back where you started.
Trey's heard that before.
That's true.
Lots of people chiming in. Aaron Rodgers is also a possibility. Tom Legendary says he's a $60 million cap hit. I don't know the specifics. I should have refreshed myself on that. I know the cost is massive. One, you got to trade for him, first of all. Second, his contract is just insane. He has all the power in Green Bay. If I had to choose, if you told me the Niners were going to get one or the other, I would choose Rodgers. Number one, he already knows the system because he played obviously in Green Bay with LaFleur. It's the same system. And two, I think Rodgers is more capable at this point in his career of putting the team on his back if he had to, kind of like what we saw with Patrick Mahomes yesterday, where all the receivers went down. Guess what? It didn't matter because he's a friggin' maniac. I think Rodgers is more capable than Brady.
I agree with you. I think he's probably still physically the better quarterback between him and Brady. But Rodgers is gone from being arrogant, but like maybe the best quarterback I've ever seen, to just being a total aloof, like out there head case. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I do know that I remember Peter King saying this or writing this. I'm not 100% sure. I'll verify this another time and get back. But he said that Rodgers' cap hit over the next 2 years, if he gets traded, is going to be less than Dak Prescott's cap hit next year. And Dak Prescott's cap hit next year is 50-something million. So I think Rodgers' cap hit over 2 years is less than 50-something million. And then the thing with Rodgers is he has to be traded, right? And I doubt Green Bay is trading him to San Francisco. Green Bay is going to trade him to the AFC. That's just what they're going to do. And that's so I feel like
hired Nathaniel Hackett.
There you go. Maybe Rodgers gets balled too. So it's him, Saleh, and Hackett, the three Musketeers. I don't know. Rodgers would be capable of doing anything crazy like that. Anyway, I think that's where Brady, because he's shown interest in playing for the 49ers before, as is Rodgers, to be fair, but Brady has shown clear interest in playing for the 49ers before. We know he wanted to come here in 2019-20. The Niners said no at the time. We know that, Brady still, if you give him a clean pocket, Brady can still carve you up and rip you apart. It's just that he doesn't handle bad protection as well. And then, of course, the Bucs didn't support him this year with the run game, and their offense was kind of a mess. And so you bring him here with the run game they have with Christian McCaffrey, who's the perfect fit with Tom Brady. George Kittle's a great fit with Tom Brady. Debo's a great fit with Tom Brady. Ayuk is a great fit with Brady. This line is good. I think Brady is more likely to fit in also with Shanahan, where him and Shanahan can maybe work together. And he might be a little more acquiescing to fit into Shanahan's system and understand it than Rodgers, who, every week on the Pat McAfee show talks about how he tells old Maddie, stop calling that. I was like, man, stop calling that.
Shanahan would put a stop to that McAfee interview. If they would have to have a conversation about that. I do wonder though, Brady's a guy who wants and has earned all the control he wants of an offense, really. But Kyle hates giving up control. That's his whole thing. He wants a quarterback to run the system exactly the way he sees it and the way he tells it to. So I don't know necessarily that marriage would work out, but I do agree with you. The quarterback situation, I don't think they're just going to say it's Brock and Lance and may the best man win. I really, really don't. And like we said, we don't know with Brock yet. As of our recording time right now, we haven't heard, but he may not even be an option for the 49ers. So they're going to do something at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's other options too, right? If Tennessee moves off of Ryan Tannehill, that could be maybe an option. I don't know really how that would work. Then you could try the Teddy Bridgewater option and then go with Lance, Bridgewater, and Purdy, depending on how Purdy's injuries. There's a bunch of different ways this could play out. The Niners quarterback situation is the gift that keeps on giving. Of course, there's one name we haven't mentioned that we do have to mention for the sake of conversation. I'm not going to be wrong by writing off this conversation today, as I've been the last two off seasons. One, Jimmy Garoppolo could be right back in this picture. Yep. We never know. I'm never writing it off that way with him anymore. I'd rather be wrong by saying he could be part of this conversation and him leaving than be burned the same exact way I've been the last 2 times when I thought for sure he was gone and I had to eat my words so bad and be so wrong. So yeah, that guy number 10, he could still definitely be a part of this conversation. In fact, they might run it back.
10-5 says don't say it. It's not, you can't rule it out. You cannot rule it out. Remember, Kyle Kami reported if Jimmy doesn't get hurt, he's coming back next year. He thinks, basically. He said he thinks the Niners would have been up for it, that they would have looked into it. Steve O says, Dr. Disrespect for quarterback. I would have taken him yesterday. I'll tell you that. Okay.
Right. That last part with Garoppolo is important because Purdy kind of made us forget about Garoppolo. But at that time, Garoppolo was playing the best football of his career. He wasn't turning it over. A lot of us thought he had maybe taken a step in the right direction. A lot of people were talking about how him and Shanahan are in a good place. And they were thinking like he could just be coming back and they could just continue with him. And then Purdy came in and Purdy said, Jimmy who? Because he was like Jimmy, but a little bit better in certain areas that, made the offense that much more explosive. And we forgot about that. So, yeah, he's always a possibility, Bob.
He's like an NFL cockroach. You cannot kill him. Will Schratt, I'm saying we should start Trey to figure out whether he's good or not. That's my position. Start Trey Lance, give him the keys, and let him go. And I don't want to hear, the 49ers know. They know who's good and who's not. Because that ain't true. Because if they knew Brock Purdy was going to play the way he played, Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't have started. Garoppolo wouldn't have been back in the first place. So I don't want to hear that the 49ers are this infallible organization when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks. Clearly, they're not. Because if they were, we'd have Patrick Mahomes right now, and we'd be in the Super Bowl.
Right. And it's with quarterback too. I think people think, well, when you see him in practice, like, well, how many guys have we seen people rave about them in practice, rave about who they are as people? But when you put them in the game situation, the position's so hard, right? First of all, finding people that are capable of throwing a football and throwing it really well is really hard. I wouldn't even say every NFL quarterback is a great passer, a great thrower. They are relative to general population who probably doesn't throw football well, but yeah, so finding people who can do that. And then all the job that goes into playing quarterback, the leadership, the ability to handle adversity, the ability to handle, setbacks, peaks and valleys within your career. Then the mental stuff. Are you smart enough to process and actually play the position? Then are you physically capable of? There's so much that goes into it. Nobody really knows until they actually see a guy go there and do it. And even if he does it for a little bit, you might think he's capable of, but you have to see him do it for a couple of years to know for sure whether you have your quarterback. And the 49ers might think, well, Lance is lacking in certain areas. That's totally fine. Until they see it on the field, they won't know if he's actually lacking in those areas, meaning he can't do it, or he's lacking in those areas maybe sometimes at practice, but he is the guy we drafted and we thought he was, and you put him in a game and he does have everything we thought he would, or he's grown. We didn't know his growth capacity. The more he's gotten to play, he's gotten so much better, and we didn't know he's gotten better the way we thought he would. So I completely agree with you, Rob. They don't know who he is. They do have to see it. I just don't know if they could sell it to the team where they would give him the starting job right back and kind of move the situation right back to where it was last year when they had seemingly moved a little bit forward with two different quarterbacks.
I don't care about selling it to the team. Guess what, team? What we're doing, it ain't working now anyway. It's not like the Niners have racked up a bunch of Super Bowl trophies and they're trying to keep it going. So you can't really argue for the status quo. Jay Mill says, we gave Lance the keys and he drove the car up on the curb and hit a mailbox. No, he didn't. He didn't even get out of the driveway in the car. He hasn't even started and finished 4 games in his career. What are we talking about? Why do we act like Trey Lance was the worst quarterback we've ever seen? Why do people do this?
I'll take this car analogy. He's the 15-year-old. He's got his permit. He's got his keys. Shanahan's the parent in the front seat. He's guiding him. He starts to back out the car, and then all of a sudden, something happens. The car stops. It doesn't work. He's maybe backed it out slightly to the right, slightly to the left. We're not sure because the car hasn't exited backing out. And we're all the little sibling in the backseat of the car telling our parents and throwing a tantrum. I can't get in the car with this guy. He's going to kill me. He's not driving it right. That's what the fans are. But really, we have no clue. We think the car might or may not be turning it in the direction, but we haven't actually seen it turn.
I agree. These people that act like we know anything about Trey Lance is absurd. Jimmy Garoppolo started and won 5 straight games in 2017 when he came into the 49ers. And everybody thought he was the franchise guy. And that was starting and finishing 5 games. And guess what? He wasn't. And we were begging for a Garoppolo replacement for years. Now, all of a sudden, Trey Lance has started 4 games, and he didn't even finish all of them. And now people think they know what he is. Like, come on. What are we doing here?
I'll say this, Rob, that same thing applies to Brock Purdy in a different way. We have a larger sample with Brock Purdy than we do with Trey Lance, but he still remains an unknown. We know what he's capable of being, but I think he remains an unknown in both ways, right? We have the group of people who say, this is the best he's going to be. This is who he is. We know who he is. No, he's a 23-year-old rookie quarterback. There's so many more ways he can get better. Now, there might be a physical ceiling to ultimately where his skill set ends up, but there's still a lot of ways he can improve, and we don't know that this is the quarterback that he is. He could be better, he could be worse, but he has to play a lot more for us to find out, and that applies for him as well. So and that's where I hope it's just a sprain, Rob, because I would love for them to just go into the offseason with 2 guys that they believe have potential. One was obviously a bunch of potential to go and draft him. The other one has shown a bunch of potential while playing. And you can go into the season and be like, well, we're going with Brock for now because he played better for now. But you can feel open because you believe in both guys and the talent of both guys and think we can come out of the season with one of those guys being good enough for us to win the Super Bowl.
Right. It's almost like if you want Lance to be the starter, then you sort of have to hope that Brock's elbow injury is not serious, because then they might let them battle it out. That's an interesting point by you. Last thing before I have to go, because I got to watch dinner for my kids. But DeMeco Ryans, that situation, Fred Warner made it pretty clear after the game that he's going to leave. He said, yeah, this is the last one, basically. Looks like Houston is the destination. We all kind of thought that Vic Fangio was just going to slide in there. There was a report that Fangio had agreed to become the DC for the Dolphins, and Mike McDaniel, being the highest paid DC in the league. Mike Silver tweeted out earlier today that Fangio told him that it wasn't a done deal, that nothing has been decided on his end. So maybe Vic Fangio is still in the mix. Is that your pick, Fish? I know a lot of people are rooting for others. Is it Evero from Denver that I think is people are rooting for? What do you think is going to happen with the DC spot?
Yeah, and so obviously it would be nice to have Vic Fangio, right? 1, he's been here, and then 2, we know that he is probably the premier defensive mind other than Belichick in the league. He's so experienced. Yes. His defense, is obviously well-renowned. Everybody's trying to copy that scheme, and in a lot of ways it'll look like how Philadelphia's defense looked last year, right? Vic Fangio's kind of defense and setup, but a lot more 4-man fronts and getting away from those traditional Vic Fangio tight and 3-4 fronts. But I don't really have a strong opinion on this one, Rob. I used to, but I kind of have come to trust Kyle Shanahan because he's done a really good job at hiring staffs. And I'm not actually personally being involved with any of these people. I like their scheme from afar, but the reason I don't even go the schematic route is this, Rob. I think the 49ers have now set a culture for their defense now that it's gone through 2 different coordinators who have both put their own wrinkle on this defense, but structurally, a lot of ways it's remained the same between DeMeco and Saleh. I think it's become a little Baltimore Ravens-esque where, the coordinators are really good and they keep coming in and out, but you have this culture of defense built around, 2 Hall of Fame players. At the time, it was Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. I think the Niners have 2 future Hall of Fame type caliber talents in Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. And they have the structure of this defense built this way around those 2 guys. I think that structure is going to remain the same in a lot of ways, and these different coordinators might come and add their own wrinkles, but the culture has already been set and the talent is already there, where I think no matter who the coordinator is, you might have a few growing pains and maybe, you have a couple of different slight changes to the scheme, but the overall performance and the overall philosophy and structure of the defense is going to remain whoever the coordinator is. And to me, that's where it's maybe a little less worrisome to name a name and stuff, because, who knew DeMeco Ryans? He's a prodigy now, right? Because he's 5 years removed from being a quality control, and he's about to be a head coach and sign a massive contract with the Texans and have full reign and autonomy, right, to rebuild that team. But before, who knew that DeMeco Ryans was going to be this? He was 3 years.
Totally fair.
Right.
Yeah.
He was 2 years into being a position coach, 3 years from being a quality control when he became a DC.
And Kyle always said he was going to, from the time he made him DC, he said he's going to be a head coach. So Kyle knew it. He recognized that immediately. So that does give me confidence for Kyle to pick the next the next coach. He grew up learning defense. Kyle would sit in defensive meeting rooms with Monty Kiffin and Mike Tomlin. He knows defense, so he's going to be able to find a good defensive coordinator. I totally agree with you. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Want to remind everybody again, I'm still working out things with SB Nation. For anyone that didn't see on Twitter or whatever, I was recently laid off. And so we're talking with SB Nation about the Control of the Niners Nation podcast feed. So for now, please stay subscribed to the Niners Nation feed. And please also subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast Network on iTunes, Google Pods, Spotify, all of that. Subscribe to both for now until we get it worked out. If you would, please, and thank you. Vish, we're in off-season mode now. It sucks, but we're going to get through it. We will be here every week with you and for you. There's always stuff to talk about with this team. It is never boring. And Vish, I thank you personally for coming along on this ride with us.
Of course, Rob. It obviously sucks what happened with Niners Nation. They screwed up. You did so much for them. So I'll say that they screwed up. But I'm glad I can come on with you and support you and do this with you anyway. I really always enjoy doing the show. And it was unfortunate because I thought we were building momentum to something. I do know that we become this year in our first year doing this the most popular podcast on Niners Nation.
On SB Nation, we were the most downloaded podcast in January 2023, but right before they laid me off. So we're building. That's all right. We're number 30, the Gold Standard Podcast Network, number 30 in iTunes, all sports podcasts, number 1 49ers podcast. So that is thanks to the support of everyone making this journey with us. And we are so grateful for that. Vish, thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I promise you, brighter days are ahead.